At DDI, we turn data-driven insights into dynamic leadership development, unlocking potential, sparking growth, driving performance, because better leaders create a better future.
Hello and welcome to today's webinar, 2026 Leadership Outlook, the 5 trends that matter most. A few housekeeping tips before we begin. You can find today's slides in the resources section of your console. This webinar is being recorded and you will receive the link to watch on demand later today. The attendee chat feature is open and we encourage your comments and responses. And thank you so much to everyone who's already chatting with us. If you have any questions, please submit those through the Q&A box. We have a lot to cover today, so if we don't get to your question, we will follow up with a response. And now let's bring in today's presenters, Stephanie Neal, Director of DDI's CABR, and Rosie Ryan, Senior Research Manager. Welcome, Rosie and Steph. We're excited to get started on this important topic today.
Thanks, Kim, and hi, everyone. It's great to be here with you all and with Rosie co-presenting these trends today. Before we dive into the trends and the research we're going to share with you, we wanted to just get a quick pulse and some input from all of you, especially thinking about the pace of business right now and that we're all trying to keep up with. What are the leadership challenges that most are keeping you up at night? We'd love to get your thoughts. So I know poll will be launching here to you, and Rosie and I will just take a peek at what you all have to share. And you'll see there's 5 listed here. We know that none of them are small challenges and they tend to show up together. So we wanted to give you an opportunity to respond to more than one. So please, as you think about it, if you had just 2 that feel most urgent for your organization, which top 2 leadership challenges keep you up at night? And we'll take a peek here at the results together. Okay, great. So we're seeing some good overlap with a couple of these. Leaders aren't working across functions and leading change, and the succession pipeline is too thin for the pace of change, which is definitely something I think we can all feel. Similarly, employees are burnt out and it's threatening performance. So curious to see if there's actually a lot for each of these today, including AI, the first one. So I think we're going to see some of these are ticking up a little bit more. Good to see the live responses. Thank you all for taking a moment. And if you haven't yet, put in the top 2 for what you're experiencing. We're seeing some things starting to tick up. Yeah, burnout and working across functions. I think those are our two winners, which we'll be diving into these a bit more, but it's really helpful already to see what it is that you're experiencing. I think it's always nice to know what are the common challenges as we're launching into something like these trends. So thank you for weighing in on the poll. You'll see that what's interesting is that these 5 issues aren't isolated. They're all potential stressors for leaders shaping the workplaces that they will manage in 2026. And one of the top issues that we see standing out in facing leaders and how they manage work for this year is the danger of work slop. So we know that AI is a big topic, and in particular, how leaders are adopting and driving AI towards forwards in their organizations. So far, our research has shown that there are some mixed results, though. And you can see on the upper left here, a McKinsey study recently found that 80% of companies using generative AI have seen no significant bottom line impact, with 42% of them literally abandoning their AI projects. And a more recent MIT study found that 95% of the AI pilot projects undertaken at the big companies they surveyed had failed. These are some big numbers that I think call into question the impact of AI. But what they really tell us is that there's a risk in pointing AI at the wrong projects and also with the wrong capabilities. So that's something we'll dive into a bit more. And often what's behind this problem is the aptly named work slop, which is AI generated content that appears polished but really lacks substance. This kind of poor quality AI output shifts the burden of work from the creator of the work to the recipient, and it can be challenging to deal with. If you haven't seen this come up yet in your role, although AI may not be coming for your job, work slop is definitely something that you'll see. And it's something we expect to see more of with more AI tools available to employees. There's greater temptation to outsource work and for leaders to even outsource their humanity and their concern for their people. Work slop isn't just about quality, it's really about connection. And employees we know will know the difference between AI generated care and the genuine concern that they get from their leaders. So, this is a trend that we really expect to be bidirectional. Leaders can be producing their own work slop and contributing to this problem, but also dealing with their team's work slop. And what we find is most important to really prevent work slop from affecting leaders' performance and their quality so that it doesn't erode that authentic connection that we know they need to have with their teams and employees. And we don't want it to weaken team engagement or dilute their credibility either, because we know that work slop from leaders, if it does go unchecked, will really undermine trust. It can block real development from happening on the job, and it can damage culture and even brand. We've seen some tough examples out in headlines already where some work slop has affected some companies' credibility. So, this is a trend that's not really about AI versus human. It's low quality AI use versus high quality use with supported transformation. And that's an important distinction. When we hear about AI right now, a lot of the conversation is about the messiness of adoption and the uncertainty around AI and the danger of AI work slop. Leaders are juggling new tools. They're, having unclear use cases, not sure what use cases to apply AI to, shifting policies amidst real anxiety from their teams. And it can feel chaotic. And honestly, most organizations are probably experimenting more than they are really executing with AI at this point. But this is the really important shift. The success of AI in any organization is not going to be determined by the technology itself. We know it's going to be determined by leadership and how leaders operate with it. And this is where our second trend comes to the forefront, which is leading through AI change. And we know that leaders will set the tone for how AI will be managed at their organizations. Our latest global leadership forecast research, which I co ran with Rosie on this call, she's one of our co authors, revealed that trust is the key component when it comes to AI and how enthusiastic or not frontline leaders and employees feel about AI. We found that frontline managers are 3 times more likely than senior leaders to express concerns about AI and the impact of AI. And this makes sense because they not only have to implement it, but AI is actually beginning to threaten and potentially replace the roles of some of their frontline workers and team members. So, our research shows that trust in senior leadership is the key factor that actually influences AI adoption success and how employees feel about AI. Leaders who trust their senior executives are 2.2 times more likely to feel excited about using AI in the workplace. So, a huge impact that they can have. And we know AI is going to require trial and error and learning quickly. So, teams will really only take risks like that they need to when they trust their leader. And when leaders show curiosity instead of critique, when they invite experimentation instead of demand perfection, all while they're building trust with their teams, then we know people will be far more likely to experiment and succeed with AI. So it's a really important piece of this puzzle. And this
Steph,
align. Oh
may I
yeah,
jump in for just a quick second and ask you to
please do.
adjust your mic down just a
Yes.
bit?
Oh, sorry if it wasn't coming through. How's it now?
You're coming through,
Can
but
I?
it's there we go. I think that's better.
Okay.
Little,
I'll try to
a
speak
little
into it
further,
more.
little further
Hopefully, you can all
down.
hear me. Okay. Thank you. I'll try to get it
Thank
there.
you. Thank
Yes.
you.
Thanks, Kim. Appreciate you giving me that nudge. And just, this aligns with where we're seeing organizations currently in terms of AI maturity. Most are just exploring and implementing AI in some initial ways, and very few are really scaling or experiencing fuller scale AI transformation. This is from a recent poll of over 100 organizations who participated in our summit, and it mirrors what we're seeing in other research too. Most organizations are really early in phases experimenting with AI. The theme that keeps coming up in the data and in what we hear from organizations around the globe is that the AI era isn't just technology challenge, it's a capability challenge. And most leaders are feeling underprepared, not because they need to become technical experts, but because AI changes how decisions get made, it changes how their teams collaborate, and how work is distributed. So these are some new challenges for leaders. And this is really where acumen, leadership, and governance intersect. It's not just skills or guidelines for using AI, it's knowing when, why, and how to implement AI responsibly and effectively, and how they can do this while maintaining and building employee trust. So, without the skills to lead in the age of AI, you can't have proper governance and you can't have strong acumen. This is a challenge that can be huge for leaders, and it leads us into our next trend that Rosie's going to introduce. So, Rosie, hopefully, you can hear me okay. And over to you for our third trend.
Thank you very much. I can hear you just fine. Can you hear me okay?
You sound great.
Thumbs up. All right, great. Thanks. And hello, everyone. I'm Rosie. I'm excited to be here with Stephanie to present with you. Our third trend that we wanted to talk about today that is impacting and shaping the workforce as we know it is called quiet cracking. It's similar to a term, if you kind of reflect back a few months ago, there was this buzzword going around called quiet quitting, which is the idea of doing kind of the bare minimum to get by. Quiet cracking, though it sounds similar, it's actually very different. So we're going to dig into that a little bit here. And it's actually a little bit more potentially dangerous because it's more difficult to detect in organizations. In our research, I guess I can talk about that in a minute, but quiet cracking, I guess the definition is referring to that instance where someone is performing well on their roles. So they're spending time getting their work done, they're completing tasks, right? So on surface level, it looks like they're doing really well, but underneath all of that and internal to people who are quiet cracking, they're actually kind of fighting some sort of internal battle where they're grappling with this idea of disengagement. So they don't feel as emotionally connected to the work that they're doing anymore. And if left unchecked, those that might be quiet cracking under the surface, they might have those withdrawal behaviors where they're eventually potentially exiting their organizations. And the things that can contribute to quiet cracking include things like chronic stress, unclear expectations, and feeling this lack of support in the work that someone's doing. So that includes like support from your team members, but also from your direct leader. In our research, we found some support and evidence that quiet cracking is already here and that it's happening. In our research of over 10,000 plus leaders, we found globally that 71% of leaders today are experiencing stress that they deem to be significantly stronger than what they typically experience in their roles. So this heightened stress level, 71% of leaders around the world are identifying that they're experiencing higher stress than normal. Of those 71% of leaders, 54%, so a little bit more than half, are experiencing stress so severe that they're concerned about experiencing burnout for themselves. And somewhat perhaps more concerning, 40% of those leaders who are experiencing that heightened stress are experiencing stress so severe that they've considered stepping away from their leadership roles altogether to protect themselves and their personal well-being. So clearly, in other words, this stress that leaders are experiencing today, grappling with some of these changes in AI work and other changes that we're going to talk about today, it's impacting people at more of a personal level. Which brings us to our next trend that I want to make sure we touch on today. When there is this uncertain feeling that people experience, during transformative times like we're experiencing right now, there's this natural tendency to kind of cling to things that are stable and the same and have this sense of security. And so that brings us to our next trend, which is on job hugging. In our research, we've been looking at turnover for quite some time, and we found evidence that turnover, especially voluntary turnover, has been on the decline for the past couple of years. And that's what we have represented here on this chart. It's the percentage of HR organizations that have reported a surge in turnover, and that's on the decline, especially since a couple of years ago. And if you cross-examine this with other turnover metrics like traditional turnover trends for leadership, for instance, or global trends for turnover, you can see that voluntary turnover is on the decline, which might seem like a good thing at first glance, right? Turnover is bad. We've been raised to believe that turnover is awful and it's so much work for HR organizations. But at the same time, if we have no turnover or little turnover, sometimes there are unintentional or intentions or things that happen that we don't account for that can potentially become a problem later on down the line, which includes job hugging. This is one of those unintended behaviors that we see. So let's break this down. Job hugging is this idea where people are clinging to what they know in their roles and their jobs, where they are right now, because it is stable. It is secure. It's a safe space. They've done this before, and perhaps it didn't burn them before, so they want to stay in that spot where it's comfortable over things like career progression, new opportunities, trying something new that might potentially be perceived as more risky. So the risk of job hugging spans beyond simply one individual person's career advancement or the delay of their advancement. In fact, if we have job hugging at a macro scale, if a lot of people are holding onto their jobs and unwilling to kind of try that next step in their careers or try something new, we see some unintended consequences, right? So for instance, sometimes you don't bring those new ideas to different opportunities and new roles, trying something new, stretch assignments, those types of things. But also we can see broader impacts if left unchecked over time to our leadership pipelines. So that brings us to our last trend that we want to make sure to talk about today, and that is the breaking leadership pipelines. So all the changes that we've talked about already and some of the things that we can talk about here momentarily are all impacting our leadership pipelines and our potential to have future-ready talent. So here are some recent examples of articles that have been published in the last 6 months or so that talk about direct changes to our leadership pipelines, whether it seems like it is or not. These are things that we've pulled that we wanted to make sure that we highlighted today. And it covers things from looking at mid-level leaders, so the idea of the great flattening or flattening organizations. Some organizations are thinking about restructuring in that way. We also have a little bit of a trend where people are looking at the C-suite under the microscope and wondering if we need so many people at the C-level. In addition to that is something that Stephanie kind of hit on already, which is the introduction of AI and how to have the right balance between human and AI or machine, and how are we going to lead and move forward with those in that right proper dynamic to get those productivity gains that everybody's looking for. So in addition to all of these little challenges that we've talked about already that are not so little, the other thing that is kind of creeping up that I want to make sure we don't lose sight of here is the idea of conscious unbossing. And we might have heard of this before, but I want to cover it just in case. Conscious unbossing is this idea that younger workers who are entering the workforce or entering leadership roles for the first time now, primarily Generation Z, but not always entirely just Generation Z. But the idea here is that the values and expectations and what's interesting to younger generations of leaders might differ from what we already know and expect and think of in terms of values. And so, for instance, Generation Z members are a little bit more likely to turn away from leadership opportunities, the formal traditional definition of a leader, for things like more autonomy in their work, a little bit of freedom, more work-life balance, and to feel that strong sense of purpose in the work that they're doing, and also having some opportunities for growth and development over things like a promotion into leadership per se. This doesn't mean that Generation Z isn't interested in leadership, right? they're interested in a different definition of leadership, and they lead in their own way, aligned with their values. And they might not be as interested in like an official promotion into leadership. So let's unpack this a little bit more and kind of bring these trends together. So here we have a diagram of a prototypical leadership pipeline, all the way from emerging leaders through our executive or our C-suite. And then on the right-hand side, you can see baby boomers are retiring, they're exiting the workforce, many of which have very niche skill sets that they've worked really long and hard at trying to perfect in their careers. So it might be a little bit difficult to backfill those right away. So if you look at that in the context of our overall pipelines and suddenly think about Generation Z, much of which a larger percentage might not be as interested in leadership opportunities, you can kind of immediately visualize that we have some vulnerabilities in our leadership pipelines. If you combine that with the other trend that we're talking about, the job hugging and the reluctance to get away from the security of our current roles that we might be facing in other generations too, you can kind of quickly understand where I'm headed, where there's some challenges with trying to backfill these roles that are changing because we have this potential stagnation where nobody wants to make a move and fill a new opportunity. In addition to these trends, this conscious unbossing and our job hugging that might put our pipeline at risk, we also have AI and how AI is changing the roles and how work is going to be done at different levels, especially, whenever you see the research out there that suggests that job crafting is going to happen in different parts of the hierarchy. And so all of this goes to say that our candidate pools for our leadership pipelines in the future are going to perhaps be smaller than what we might have dealt with or worked with previously. So this is putting our pipeline at risk. So taking this collectively and all together, one thing that I want to leave us here before I turn things back over to Stephanie is that many of our development programs still rely on this assumption that high performers are going to want to pursue leadership opportunities right away and move in their career. And that's an assumption, but it might be a little outdated whenever we think of all of these different trends that we're seeing today. And so this presents a valuable opportunity for us to revisit our approaches and our strategies for development and retention and even identifying talent for the future. These are opportunities for us to think about that a little bit differently now that we know what types of things leaders are struggling with and grappling with today. So I'm going to turn things over to Stephanie to kind of talk about what are those things that we can do for our next step forward for the modern leader.
Thanks, Rosie. And that's right. When we look at how all these challenges work together, it feels like big challenges from AI readiness, cross-functional leadership, engagement, succession, and burnout. It's easy to see why leaders might feel overwhelmed too. We know these challenges are all interconnected and they often hit at the same time. So, what is it that better leaders do in times like today? As we took a look back at other crucial times of change and some really big challenges, a common underlying theme stood out to us, which is whether it's leaders confronting an economic crisis in the 70s or back in 2008 with the recession, the COVID pandemic just 5 years ago, or the current challenges posed by AI, we can see that these trends aren't pointing us towards something completely new. You can see very similar responses, even here on the screen, with similar responses to these challenges at their time. And instead, the current challenges really point us back to fundamentals of great leadership, creating clarity, building trust, coaching well, collaborating across boundaries, and developing people earlier to build a resilient pipeline. These were all crucial things in their times as well. So while the context may feel more complex, the path forward is actually familiar. The organizations that focus on strengthening needed core leadership capabilities, we've seen them succeed well through these challenging times, and they're the ones that will navigate this transition with a lot more confidence and far better results too. So if the path forward is familiar, the question becomes, where do we actually begin? And the answer can be a lot simpler than it feels. You can start by having the conversations that matter, the ones that surface expectations, rebuild trust, and create alignment around what's possible. And we found that there are three conversations that can help unlock momentum for organizations navigating this transition now. They're not complex, but they are catalytic, and you can start with any of these right away. So, a first conversation to start with is as an HR team to be clear what leadership excellence means for your organization. Since a lot is changing, this is always a good idea and a good place when perhaps your strategy may be changing too. And this will have an impact not just for 2026, but for beyond. This is something that directly impacts your leaders too. Often they're not clear on what's expected of them and can be left feeling overwhelmed. So, defining and clarifying what's most important for leadership excellence instantly changes the tone through leaders' expectations for what it means for them to be a strong leader at your organization. Demystify this, and leaders will have a much clearer direction for this year ahead and beyond that as well. The second conversation that you can start in the next month is to open a dialogue with your senior leaders about what are the top leadership skill gaps that, if addressed, will help your organization manage change and navigate potential disruption. And some good news here is that you don't have to start from scratch. We're doing some work to identify the top skills to navigate disruption. And the skills that we call the 5 C's to lead in the AI era are curiosity, clarity, creativity, connection, and conscience. And this will actually be our topic for our webinar next month, where we'll drill down even deeper into the skills that leaders need. So please join me next month, January 21st, actually, to learn more when we cover this and demystify the leadership gap in your AI strategy. And we'll dive into these a bit more. And lastly, but not least, the third conversation that can have an immediate impact to start in the next month is to make the business case for developing leaders with the skills that will help them to be more prepared to manage change and navigate the challenges that they are and will face in the year ahead. This may be a conversation you've already started or that your team has made the case for already, which positions you even better. But we know this can be a challenge for some HR teams. So there are a few things that we'll call out that can help prepare for and just to make a more successful case for leadership development as a business imperative. This includes any internal research you can bring about your leaders or workforce, such as if there's low engagement or another issue that you're trying to counter. There's also plenty of external research available that can help make the case for how leadership development impacts operational business and team outcomes that can matter to your organization. And all it takes to start is really having one specific proof of concept to propose, such as if you want to develop emerging leaders or high potentials who haven't previously received any development. That's always a great place to start. And having that one pilot case that you can ask for specific development investment in, and then have the results to show for it. We know and we've heard and seen many examples of this and know how rewarding it is to see the impact of your team's effort pay off, especially when you have a concentrated group that you're working with, and then to be able to demonstrate that back in terms of ROI. And that's the final point that we'd like to make today. I know we're just about at time and we need to wrap up, but this is really a time for you to shine. And we know that talent management and learning and development professionals hold the keys to developing better leaders who can have a positive impact on your workplaces. I know that this is something we have to wrap up fairly quickly, but what would be really helpful, and we'd love to hear from all of you, you've been great sharing in chat, is just drop in chat. What is the next step that you're planning to take? We know you can benefit from each other's examples too, and just sharing what the next step is that will make an impact for your teams. We'd love to hear more of your input. And it's been awesome having this time with you all and hearing your thoughts earlier in our webinar as well. Hopefully you could hear me clearly well enough. But also, Rosie, great joining you. And thank you all so much for joining us. And we look forward to a great year ahead we hope that you can join us next month. I know the link is available to you in your resources, and hopefully we will see you then. Thank you so much.